All right, it looks like everyone's here. We can get started.
And we are streaming.
Nope, not yet.
Oh, no, we're good. It just kicked in.
Great. All right, thanks and welcome everyone to the November 1st meeting of the City of Santa Rosa Art and Public Places Committee. Pursuant to Government Code Section 4953E and the recommendation of the Health Officer of the County of Sonoma, Art and Public Places Committee members will be participating in this meeting via Zoom webinar. Members of the public can participate in the meeting virtually through the Zoom link. The public accessing the meeting through Zoom will be able to provide public comment on agenda item at the time the agenda item is discussed during the Art and Public Places Committee discussion. The city has postponed many non-essential meetings until further notice. We appreciate your patience and willingness to protect the health and wellness of our community. If you have any questions, you can contact our meeting recorder, Eileen Cleary, and matters on the agenda may be taken out of order. And recording secretary, do you have any other items to add for how the public can participate today?
Yes, members of the public wishing to speak during item 3, public comment, or during any of the scheduled items will be able to do so by utilizing the raised hand feature or by pressing *9 on their phone. They will then be given the ability to address the committee. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Eileen. At this time, I would like our recording secretary to please take roll call.
Chair Kiefer.
Present.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter.
Present.
Member Baumgartner.
Present.
Member Asdirian.
Present.
Member Fuentes.
Present.
Member Nathanson.
Present.
Let the record record that all members are present.
Great. Moving on to number 3, public comments. This is the time when any person may address matters not listed on the agenda, but which are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Eileen, do we have any public comments at this time?
We do not have any raised hands at this time, nor do we have any emails or voicemails for this meeting.
Great, thank you. Item 4, approval of minutes. Today we are reviewing 2 meeting minutes for approval. The October 4th meeting minutes and the October 18th special meeting minutes. You all have a copy of the meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve, but I just want to make sure if I do make a motion to approve, but do they have to be 2 different motions, or could I approve both in one motion?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Eileen.
I was going to say technically, because we have them listed as separate line items, it would be 2 motions.
Okay. Okay, then I will go ahead and do the October 4th ones first, and I'd like to make a motion to approve those as submitted, as written. Second. And then, go for it.
And then we just need to vote. So
yes,
please raise your hand if you choose to agree.
Let the record reflect that all members have approved the meeting minutes for October 10th. For October 4th. Apologies.
Great. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the October 18th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to approve those as submitted or as written.
All right. And then we can place a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand.
the record reflect that the meeting minutes for October 18th have been unanimously approved.
Just want to mark that Kristen and Nathan were absent from that meeting, so actually shouldn't vote on the October 18th minutes.
Gotcha. I will make a note of that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now moving on to our scheduled items. Item 5.1, Art and Public Places Committee Ad Hoc Task Force Discussion. Staff will facilitate a discussion about the current ad hoc task forces related to overlapping goals, tasks, and deliverables. And for everyone's information, this agenda item is recommended discussion action.
Thank you, Kristen. I'll just kick off a little bit of information before we dive into the discussion to frame the general idea with this agenda item. There is no action requested, so no motion needs to be made today regarding this. It's really an open conversation for the committee to have regarding the ad hoc task forces that are current with the committee, and to potentially share how some of the work that has been going on with those overlaps with each other with the different groups, and talk about maybe what can be helpful for each group to progress on some of the assigned work areas. So it's really meant to be a conversation and a discussion, and ask questions and figure out if there's a better way to do this. So just a reminder that the current task forces are: 1, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Task Force, which is Lisa and Anne. And there are 4 kind of work areas or tasks under that task force, which were on that document that was reviewed at I think it was back in April, the April Art and Public Places Committee meeting. I can put those back up on the screen. I can share my screen if that would be helpful to look at those as we start this conversation, but for now I won't rattle them off. And then the second 2, task force number 2 is engagement, and that is Jeff and Melanie. And then the third task force is project development, and that is Kristen and Nathan. And so as I've met with the different task forces, there's been, I think, a lot of questions on figuring out how task forces really should function in this way, and what would be most effective to move some of the tasks under these groups forward. But I've also heard some kind of maybe frustration or just concern that there's some overlapping areas that have to do with all 3 of the task forces, such as engagement, that kind of touches on all of them, as well as kind of what programming or projects are coming out of some of the ideas. And potentially there's others too. So I just wanted to put this item on the agenda as a way for all of the task forces to have a conversation with each other, since by nature of why we form small task forces in this way, to limit the members to 2, so that there are a quorum, right? So you can't really talk to each other unless it's published on an agenda larger than just your small task force group. So thus, that's why we are having this meeting, to encourage a little bit more of a broader conversation about how it's going with each task force. What are some of the overlapping areas that we can help each other with? And really my question to the group is just what would be helpful in terms of a discussion for each task force to progress on your assigned work areas. So I'll just stop there, and then I'm happy to put up that document on the screen to review those areas if that would be helpful. Otherwise, happy to just let someone ask questions or share your thoughts.
Tara, if you want to share your screen, I think Anne and I were both nodding our heads. That would be very helpful.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
I agree too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
coming up.
Okay. I have that up. Is that okay if I speak, or is this someone else?
Yes,
wanted to
Lisa,
speak?
please go
Okay.
ahead.
All right, here, hold on one second. You got me. You put that up and I already had notes on mine, but that's fine. So like they said before, like Tara mentioned before about the overlap, and I agree. So the few conversations I did have with groups and people who are organizations where nobody really knew that we were even accessible. And I don't want that to be that way anymore. And I want us to be accessible. And how do I do that? I'm not all the way sure and positive. Do I need to be, do we, Anna and myself need to be more visible in certain events or certain places and show our faces and to show that art in public places does exist and we're here for you. I mean, I need some ideas. I mean, I have some ideas and stuff and look, but I mean, if other people have, ideas on things that have worked for them, please let me know, because what I'm doing and trying to get out there and look, we are accessible to everyone within Santa Rosa, just not a small group of people. But that is also sometimes that can overlap with the engagement task force too, because they're going to reach out to people. So this is something I don't know if we could work together, well, because we can't, there's only a certain amount of people we can work together, but we need to really probably set more specific guidelines instead of being, because it is somewhat vague right now. We have ideas on what we want to do, but we just don't, the steps are not there yet. And I think we need to structure a little more structured guide or just a discussion here to give us, more detailed outline. Anyone?
Well, I'll jump in.
Okay.
So in our task force meeting, it came up really early in the conversation about, well, I had noticed that in our previous meeting talking about this, Lisa, I think you were the one who sort of jumped in and said that you were community engagement, and was like, oh no, that's right, you're diversity.
Yeah, diversity.
I mean, I think for both of our task forces, there is a little bit of confusion because community engagement definitely is about trying to address diversity, equity, inclusion, and access issues. And it also definitely touches on project development. And one of the things we discussed early on, like in our very first meeting, was that the Museum of Sonoma County has a community engagement strategic goal and a committee that's working on it. I'm also on the community engagement subcommittee for the UNAM project, Courthouse Square public art project that's currently underway. And so there are definitely these overlaps. So I think this is the time when we can talk about how we want to either merge what we're doing or acknowledge the overlaps and then kind of divide up who's doing what, because I feel a little bit confused about what we should be actually doing as we move forward and what we're trying to accomplish through whatever those discussions and activities might be.
No, I agree. I agree with you there, Nate. I think, and it's definitely, we should have a more specific outline of what we want to do and how do we want to do it, and pick people. Okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I'll take care of that. And you can't do that until I get this. And once I do get this, I can report back to you. I mean, that's it. When I look over this and look what needs to be done, that's my perspective, what I'm getting from here. There's some things on here that you really can't move forward unless you have some other things from that probably another group needs to do.
I'm working on a couple of different projects that I think are related to these things, but they're, I don't know. I mean, they're at this point, they're independently undertaken things. And one of them is a North Bay iteration of the Other Places Art Fair, which is an art fair of artist-run and alternative art spaces that has been running in LA for the last 4 years. So that'll happen in March. It'll be about 25 different booths. We're figuring out where that's going to happen. But that, that could be an opportunity to sort of workshop some sort of lines of flight within the questions that we're negotiating around these things. And the other is that sort of long deferred presentation on the history of socially engaged art practices by Ben Kinmont. And that'll happen, I think, in December. We're just fixing a date, but that, just as something in the background, that might be an opportunity for some conversations.
Well, I can just chime in a little bit that I think a couple things to remind the whole group in how, like the parameters of how you can kind of operate. It sounds like there's some question about that maybe some clarity would be helpful. And then also, like what steps each group can take to bring something forward. So I don't know, Lisa, your questions, and Jeff, your questions kind of made me feel like that kind of input would be helpful. So, I mean, I can share and kind of reiterate certain things that I think I've talked to each group about as I've met with you all, that, the bullet points that are on this document were a starting point for each group with specific things that were identified in our strategic plan. And so whatever work the subcommittee or the task forces could do in these areas would help implement the strategies that we developed in that process that are in that plan. Obviously, some are more nebulous than others, right? And are going to take a different approach than maybe just having meetings or drafting out a proposal for something. But I think, each task force should feel empowered that you can create your own strategies and your own procedures, your own outlines for how you feel like some of these areas should be tackled. And if that includes work with other groups in the city or other staff input or, joint meetings like this, where all the task forces can discuss together, that those are possible. And that you also all, as you did at the last meeting, the October 4th meeting, ask to have items brought to the agenda, right? So in that item on our standing agenda, there's the ability to talk about potential future agenda items, but also to make a motion to put an item on an agenda. So, so I think that just keeping those kind of frameworks in mind, that's kind of the system that allows some things to be brought forward, I think is helpful in this case. But, if there are other things that are still needed in order to get more clarity, I think that would be helpful to know so that I can provide as many resources as I can for you.
So one thing strikes me, and that is, if we're talking about all three of these task force areas and the bullet points that are listed here, in my work with the committee that's overseeing the Unum project, that's really present and happening, and we've made decisions, and now there's public input for all of these words that can be included. So there's been an effort to kind of hit actually quite a few of these bullet points. And so the Community Engagement Committee has a diversity component. It's really, it really was tasked with trying to be as inclusive as possible. And there's all kinds of discussion about what are the words that are included, and how does that engage the whole process of getting people to put words into the project. That's about community engagement. Although it's not a project being developed, it's a project that has been developed and it's actually happening. So one of the things that strikes me is that as we are talking about future projects and what we see as our role in identifying projects, whether they be permanent or temporary, and how we frame those projects for the community, whether it's really local to Santa Rosa, regional to Sonoma County, or broader based. I wonder if we should really be looking specifically at the work of project development as being informed by the other two areas, the diversity, equity, inclusion area, and engagement in terms of what the projects are and how they're developed, and how we reach out to the community and make those projects feel relevant and real to our community. I'm just thinking about practical application as opposed to sort of a more theoretical approach. Does that make sense? Everybody's so quiet.
No, I think it does make sense. Yeah, there's definitely some good points there. So when I was looking at mine and what are our priorities and stuff, like for instance, the first one, it says, partner and build stronger relationships with culturally diverse. So when I'm reaching out to these organizations, individuals or people, and trying to, establish a stronger relationship with them, I'm just like, I know that the engagement task force, they were looking to do that, or might be doing that too with others. But when I'm supposed to make my presence known, myself and Anne, we're supposed to make our presence different from whatever, Nathan, remember Nathanson. And then
You can call me
Nathan.
Jeff, that's okay.
Jeff, okay. Jeff. And Melanie, they're probably also have been talking to these people or reaching out to these people. So it's kind of, that part would be redundant. But so that we need to take a different approach, or it's just like, that's where I think we need to just set specific guidelines. I'm taking on this and making myself present, because if we're both going to the same organization, but we both have different goals or different outlines and different bullet points on what we're supposed to do, that I don't know if that would work, rather than myself and Anne go after a certain organization and have this discussion and, hey, we're here for you, or we want to be accessible to you, and try to build that relationship. So do you understand what I'm saying here? It's just,
Lisa, I might be able to add something. This is Raisa. So, I think the impetus behind this, right, is to engage the committee in a different way, or not to engage the committee in a different way, but for the committee to be engaged in a different way, to take a more active role in shaping some of these things. So, like, when I look at diversity, equity, inclusion, access task force, that is, how do we operate? Do we need to change policies and programs? Are we transparent? Are we considering the things that the community at large wants us to consider when we're operating our program, right? where are their opportunities and how does that relate? Engagement feels a little bit different in terms of how are we engaging? Are we engaging the community broadly? Do they understand how open this is, that we are open to their input that might affect project development or something like this? So there are some slight nuances between these. It's what do we need to change to do better? What do we need to do to engage? And then that has practical implications on project development, for example. So that might be a way to look at it. But I think the biggest point, and I think you made this in the beginning, is your ability to decide what that is and to understand sort of like the general scope of what we're doing, of what engagement is, and how does that drive and advance the program. And I don't know if I misunderstood anything, if I'm answering something that you'd already answered, but that's what I was thinking when you were speaking.
Hi, Raisa. Thanks for jumping in, and I think that does help add clarity. What it tells me is that the way I'm kind of thinking of it is really more practical application for the way, like Raisa just said, the way we operate. So maybe the thing that needs to happen is that each one of our task forces provides a bit more direction relative to all of its bullet points, so that the project development that happens out of this committee and the projects that we choose to support, and whether we're putting out an RFP or we're working on budgets, but we're always thinking about what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the diversity and equity, inclusion goals, the engagement, community engagement aspects. One of the things I'd really love for us to dig into as a group, rather than individually as these separate task forces, and to Tara's point, the fact that we have to put it on an agenda and really have it be officially sanctioned as a discussion amongst all of us. But when we're looking at our strategic planning and we're planning out what are the projects that we're working on, that we're supporting, that we're trying to see happen in the city, that we're really consciously aware of all of these goals, and that we start to really think about what projects might be temporary, what projects are permanent, and what we're really trying to accomplish with each project. Because we could really be encouraging a lot more sort of I don't know, almost guerrilla art projects. So you're getting, getting neighborhoods really engaged with creating temporary projects. One of the conversations that's ongoing now between the museum and the Office of Community Engagement has to do with the Multicultural Roots Project and our Sonoma County Stories Project. And so kind of merging our goals and working together to collect stories. But one of the things we haven't quite figured out is, well, is there a public art or public performative aspect of what we're doing as we're collecting stories? Like how we're creating at the museum an exhibition, but beyond the exhibition that we're creating, how do we share those stories? Is there, what is the public component of that?
And Jeff, can I just hit on that? And going back to the DEIA task force, have we even defined who were the diversity and inclusion and equity element of it? Do we understand it? Or are we just doing, like, those things can be defined? And you can even go back and say, like the discussion you had around UNAM, you can go back and say, why did we have that discussion? Well, because we don't actually have that DEI piece, because we don't trust that we understand what we're doing. So again, it's looking back and fixing, but looking forward and having a clear understanding, or developing that clear understanding of, when we say that there's DEI, just because the Office of Community Engagement is doing it doesn't mean that necessarily their equity lens or their inclusivity or their, like, is their audience what our audience is? How do we know what our DEIA element is, to compare it and to understand if it aligns with somebody else's? And I think that's where the foundational level to get to where you are, where we have a lot of opportunities, and that can be applied then moving forward.
Can I add on that? So I understand it's, we're trying to do the DEIA, we're trying to do the operations and how we operate, but, we're going to create a set of specific criteria. But to create this set of specific criteria, we, that's related to diversity and inclusion that they have on there. We need to get an idea of what the community's needs and wants are. And so when I was reaching out and trying to find what those needs and wants, we need to bring those back and relate and, kind of develop based on those needs and wants. And so since that's what kind of, I didn't want to overlap when I'm out there reaching out to people to see what their needs and wants, or how do I communicate with the other groups to see what they have for their needs and wants, so we can really create this, this criteria. And then we can go from there. And once we do that, would that be something that would go on to the project development? So they would develop what, we'd have this criteria, and they would go ahead and develop the actions that need to be taken?
I wouldn't say that that's kind of sequentially how they would go. I understand the project development task force to kind of take more of a look at how public art is talked about and planned into a project as it's being developed. So whether that's looking at the specific plan, the general plan, and evaluating how projects are currently created through the public art and private development process. That I don't know if that necessarily connects in that way, but as in like getting feedback from another task force and implementing it. But I think they do work together. I don't think sequentially, though, you could hand off work to another task. I don't know. I hadn't envisioned that.
I would say that the project development task force right now is focused on a project of including artists in the general plan update and how art is considered in that plan. But it is also listed under that task force that that group would work on public art project plan development for a variety of projects that this committee approves. So, and just to be clear, private development is not a part of this area. The committee doesn't really have oversight over those projects. So I guess I see the collaborative nature being like two-way information flow, kind of. I mean, it's not like one goes to the other. It's more like each group is working on set specific tasks, but there's collaboration and communication about how that work is getting done. And then I do think that once there is a set of specific criteria related to diversity and inclusion for projects, that is helpful for the project development task force, because it will help inform the development of new projects. And similarly with engagement. So I feel like it all kind of goes multiple directions, and it's not necessarily handing off work to one or another. But just for an example, I think a concrete example might be helpful to kind of picture how this might work. So just an example, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Task Force could create a set of criteria, right? That's on there related to diversity and inclusion when developing new projects and improving projects. So after the work that goes into that, from gathering information from the community, researching best practices of how other public art programs do that, talking to other staff members. I mean, I know Socorro's on this call. She's our equity and equal employment officer. So I think that there's a lot of resource there as well. So there's a lot of information I think that could go into developing some criteria. Then that task force, once they have a draft ready, could bring that to the committee, right? We could have a committee meeting. Discussion of that could be on the agenda so that there's, a conversation. When it's ready or finalized, it could be adopted by the committee as that something that would be a part of our projects from then on, or considerations that need to be taken into account for every time we're starting a new project. So then when the project development task force is working on developing, new project plans, that they then are incorporating that into that new plan, right? So that's kind of like one example, but there's a variety of those types of more concrete things that take a lot of, collaborative work to draft, but then it does come to the committee for discussion and ultimately some kind of adoption or approval, and then it's implemented throughout how we do our programs. I don't know if that's helpful. It just feels like maybe just having something as an example.
No, that actually was real helpful. And that just gave me, it helped a lot. So Ann and I can just brainstorm on something specific and try to just lay out our guidelines and our outlines, and then just maybe discuss it with you then, Tara, or I can even reach out to a few other people. And then we can just go from there.
It seemed like we were getting a little hung up on the fact that we might be bombarding people with questions or requests, but I don't know, we haven't done anything. So it seems to me that we can maybe afford to go do a little overkill to try and build up some enthusiasm for what we're doing. And, if the engagement task force is talking to a group and diversity and equity is talking to the same group, I think it's okay, because we have different topics that we want to find out information from them. But I think we just have to get going.
No, I agree. I agree with you,
Yeah,
Melanie.
I think
Wanted to
think
acknowledge that Nathan has his hand up. Is
Okay.
that-
Thanks.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
go
stop
ahead.
talking.
I'll jump in when you guys finish.
Yeah, I just think that we just have to get started. And, the only way we're going to get people to engage with us is if we start building these relationships when we don't need anything from them. So that's my 2 cents.
My question is just sort of following that, if developing criteria with an eye towards issuing requests for proposal is or has to be the primary kind of paradigm that we're operating in. Like, does everything have to be about like an open RFP, or can we be initiating kind of targeted RFPs, or sort of reaching out to people directly, as opposed to establishing criteria or sort of building a more robust bureaucratic structures to address these things? Like, maybe there's a more immediate and direct way to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, that's a good question, Nathan. The current public art policy allows for a variety of types of artist solicitation approaches. So the one that we do use the most, because of the fact that we're a public art program and there's a process that I think the committee has operated under in terms of like, access to our funds being a consideration, a high priority consideration, which is an open competition process. That's what's most traditionally used. But our policy does allow for direct selection if there's a kind of a framework or justification as to why we're doing it that way, or an invitational selection where we're just inviting a few people, or the kind of open call. So, I mean, there's or limited. I think there's 4. So it's like open, then there's like limited open call, and then there's like invitation only, and then there's direct. So so that being said, I think that developing, it would be interesting to look at developing a kind of some guidelines for how and when those different types of solicitation techniques should be used, so that there's an understanding of why that decision is being made.
So I just want to throw out an idea here, if that's all right. If I'm going to work on some kind of criteria, for instance, like, so if someone comes and asks, I want to actually, because I want to do a criteria for if you see a wall somewhere, let's say they're in Roseland, there's a wall, and there's a person that comes, or a group, an organization that says, hey, we would love for this wall, to beautify this wall and do, a mural on it. And the APPC would come in and say, this is how we can help you. And we have those set of guidelines, how we can assist them in getting that done. And I just think, once they have that guidelines in front of them, and we can actually give those to organizations and stuff, this is how that works. You see something, you want to change it, you want to beautify it, let us help you do that. Is that something that, we could work on and get that going? I mean, is that just, sound like a good idea? And then how do, we can promote that once we get that and, vote on it and push it through?
Yeah, so Lisa, I think there's I kind of am hearing 2 parts of your question. More literally, we actually do have a mural process. So if someone is asking that question, we have a document to give them that outlines what they can do to get a project done. It is a situation where it depends on the property owner and if there's any city funding related to it and all of that. But it's essentially a step-by-step thing for the community. Here, you want to do a mural in some part of Santa Rosa, here's something that will help you that involves, could or may not involve any Art and Public Places Committee approval, but at least it's a place for them to start so they know the steps they would need to take. But broader than that, like more generally, your question, I think it's like I think that is a part of what the Project Development Task Force, one of their bullet points is to conduct an audit of our current process by which regular and temporary projects are approved. And so it kind of opens up a bigger question about empowering and enabling the community to do more projects by removing kind of the red tape or the hoops that they have to jump through to get our funding or to get our approval for a project that really we should just let them do. And I think that having that discussion about what needs to be considered in that second bullet point under project development, that rapid response approval process, right? I think that to me is a part of a larger kind of strategy discussion about what could be developed to support that area more so than just giving someone a document that shows them step-by-step how to do a mural.
Well, and my other question would be on this is because so many people don't know about this. They have no clue what the process is, and the people who we want to reach don't even know that this is available to them at all. I mean, when I mentioned this to a couple people, they were just, really? We could do that? It's just, I thought that was completely off limits. So that's where how can we design it and make it and actually be a part of this community, different community organizations, and get it out there to them and make them know we're here and this is what we have. And these are the different options that we can assist you with.
I think that's part of what we're asking to come back to us. And when you hear that, then it's like, oh gosh, okay, well, let's start designing this. What are they saying would be helpful to know? But I also want to call Sakura out a little bit and see, hey, do you have anything to add, like listening to this, ideas and thoughts based on the conversation you're hearing, and any guidance that you have?
Hi, good afternoon. I think that in general, I think ideally there wouldn't be a DEI subcommittee, right? Because it would be embedded in your other two committees. But until such point that you're clear what that means, you kind of need to have a subgroup working on that, clarifying it, bringing it back to the larger group, vetting it, and to Member Puentes and Vice Chair Jones-Carter, you have to rebuild, reestablish, reinvest in relationships. And that's simply time and attention and active listening. And so I think that while there might be some, to your point earlier, like somebody might go to the same groups, some of it isn't about groups. Some of it's about individual relationship building. And so those are, you can define, let the problem come to you versus worry about it on the front end. Let your work kind of roll and iteratively come back together. Where are you maybe, too much of the Venn diagram where you're overlapping too much and you worry that it's repetitive or you're confusing people, and let that kind of become clear how much overlap there is, because I agree that to several points that it's probably not visible enough in the community, period. So you can say it a couple times and people still won't hear you till like the 7th time, what you do and how it's possible to participate in all of those things. And then the follow-up, generally the idea is there's engagement, but you might need targeted engagement for people who that big net of engagement was not trapping, that you sent out an email blast or you posted something to online, but the very diverse groups that you want engaged, whatever that mechanism traditionally has been, isn't the most useful one. And my last point would be, I think it's a very good idea. Member Puentes said, I think this is what I thought I heard you say, that go out and kind of do some listening sessions with some of our diverse artists or artist groups, parts of the community who have felt either othered or not part of this, and see what they think, the help they think they need, the ways in which this can be supportive to their work and their efforts in the city, and kind of iteratively come back to all the groups and share that information so everybody can ultimately bake it into what they're doing, whatever subgroup. And over time, I think the DEI group probably will phase itself out. You'll have markers, you'll have success indicators, you'll have values and criteria that you're looking for, and everybody will use them. But until such time that you've allowed yourself to create that, you probably do need a small group that's going to dig in, look for best practices in other places or next practices in other places, do the research. What are other cities or public art spaces doing? Kind of come back and share what you found, and those active listening circles with some of our own community members about where that they felt engaged or ways that they felt othered, and build that back into everybody's recipe for all the work they're doing. So I guess I just say yes. It's a lot of ands. Yes.
No. You're giving me a lot of good information and what I need to do. I mean, there's a lot more that I need to do, but I do have a better direction right now and what needs to be done. So this is good. This is actually great. I definitely appreciate all the information that I'm getting and the feedback.
And I think it'll become so much clearer when you engage in the conversations, because people are going to tell you what they've enjoyed or what they've missed or how things felt in ways that probably we weren't even necessarily considering. I mean, there's so much rich information comes from focus groups or one-on-one calls about, hey, this is what we're doing. What are your thoughts? And once people believe you're really listening and engaged and are going to do something with that information, I think you'll find out quite a lot.
And, I just want to add on that, the strategic plan that we just went through, I mean, it's new. We have the opportunity, and the whole, one of the ideas around doing the strategic plan was to just re-envision who are we, not just as a program, but as a group. So just keep in mind, like, it's not Tara and me and Socorro and the city saying, hey, APPC, this is what you're doing. It is, we need your help to understand how you want to move forward, but how we can best iterate to a better program and a better committee and a better whatever it is. So you don't be stuck on what this document is either. We have a strategic plan. We know the vision and the goal. We're open, I guess, is what I want to remind you.
Okay, that's wonderful. So how I'm going to reach out to certain groups and people, I want to get some more information on exactly what we have to offer, our kind of rough guidelines of what we have and what we can do and how we are trying to assist and we are going to try to help. And these are some ideas, and this is open to you and everybody. And we're trying to reach out. We want to have your ideas. We want to get we want to see your visions, and we want to get those visions, actually become tangible items, and just basically to beautify our city by people, within Santa Rosa and areas that have not had that much of attention put into them, as they should have. And so that's more of, am I going in the right direction here?
I would just say that I don't think the focus is on what we have to offer them right now. It's on what do you think a public art program should do for you?
I have gotten that from people, and they mostly, the response of what they think is not stuff that I, really want to, it's just, we were shut off. And we were our own secret society group. And that's the reaction I've got from so many different people, because I've been trying to just ask and talk to people and have a conversation with just any event I go to and see artists. And I just randomly have these conversations with anybody and everybody, and especially someone who's of color and from Santa Rosa. I will automatically try to talk to them. And it's just, they really want to know, well, what do you have? I mean, how are you trying to be open to us? What are you trying to do? And it's just like, hey, I want, reach out to us. What are your ideas? What are your visions? What would you like to see? And how can we partner to make this happen? So.
Well, and you can always invite people. Tell me what that would mean to you. So if they're like, you're not showing up, or I don't feel like you're inclusive, explain to me what that would look like to you. What would we be doing if you felt like you belonged? If you felt like these programs were for you? If you like, whatever it is, kind of turn it, you're always able to turn it around and be like, help me understand what that means to you. Give me some specific examples so I can take them back, because it's our intent to do better. We thought we were, now we know. So now that we know better, we're going to do better. So help me understand what that looks like. So when I share back what you said, I'm doing it in a way that represents you well. Things like that.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. That works.
Well, thank you, Socorro. I think this has been a really useful kind of repositioning of how to think about our involvement and our role within these task forces. And again, not to be tied to the language from the strategic plan, but to be really thinking about how those guidelines can, or the goals can train or encourage our own thought processes and how we communicate. And Yeah, this is a new kind of role for our committee, so it's something that we will need to grow with and kind of get our feet under ourselves. But I did want to ask for public comment if we had any or if we had anyone wanting to give a public comment at this point while we're still on this discussion topic.
We have no raised hands at this time.
Thank you, Eileen. Were any other committee members wanting to raise any other questions on this topic, or did they feel that maybe if we sent out the strategic plan document again, that might help with, I know I haven't read it since, I've read sections of it, but not with the lens of my committee or my task force in the last few weeks. And I think that might help with our kind of repositioning. Tara, if you wouldn't mind resending that or letting us know where we can find that, that would be great.
Sure, I can do that. And it looks like Socorro's hand is up. So if you want to.
Great. Socorro, thanks.
I would just offer one more, just like little information for starting on this journey. One thing about healing past harms or historical kind of traumas is that people may share things with you that are not of your time, not when you were there, not of your doing, nothing that you would have sanctioned. And sometimes it's really hard not to get personally defensive. And part of the process of healing is allowing them to speak their truth, taking it in when the time is right, and it might not even be the first conversation, but if there's information that's incorrect, clarifying that, and then also finding a way to share back repeated trends and themes over time. So it's not just, oh, I heard from member Nathanson and he said, but it's, several people repeated over multiple conversations, A, B, and C. So people don't feel violated or don't feel like they shared with you and then the whole world knew. And that you're kind of elevating themes and themes that can be baked into your practices, your scoring, your call for proposals, all of those different things. So while you're collecting individual information, you report out themes.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Oh, yeah.
We're here to support you.
Yeah, no, I've never got defensive though, and sounds like I'm getting defensive right now. But because I, a lot of times I wasn't there, and I think I'm the committee member that's been on here the longest. But I just want to listen to their frustrations, just to make sure that it's just if there's some way it cannot be repeated again.
Right.
Absolutely. That's really my goal, is to just, okay, how can we go about this differently?
Great.
And I think that really sounds good. And Socorro, I don't mind that you called me out, but I think it's actually, no, I know it was just an example. I want to take this, and we should all take this to motivate and inspire us to listen and to let members of the community know that we really do want to listen, and we want to digest the information we're getting and put it into practice. And I guess that's what I was saying at the beginning of my comments, is finding ways that we can take what we're trying to do on a theoretical level and apply it to the way that we operate and the planning that we do and the decision-making process through which we are engaged. And so I know this is not the only group, the only organization that's tackling these challenges. The museum's doing it. I know LBC is doing it. I know just about every nonprofit arts and cultural organization in the state, if not the country, is trying to go through this at some level or another.
I just want to pop in here. I have to jump off for another meeting, but I want to also just remind you, one of the other things is this program and committee does is support other organizations. And so there are always opportunities for to identify other places where we can partner. We do not have to be the end all be all. We want to support the business aspect of our arts community. So always good for that as well. Thank you all for allowing me to jump in. And this was an amazing conversation. And I apologize that I'll be leaving now, but Sakura and Tara, of course, will stay on.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Raisa.
See you,
Raisa.
Raisa.
Bye.
All right, at this time, unless anyone wants to, I feel good about our conversation so far about our task forces. I would like to move on to item 5.2 and hear about opportunity for a youth representative on the Art and Public Places Committee. This time, staff will provide an update on current efforts by the Office of Community Engagement for youth participation on city boards, committees, commissions, and facilitate a discussion about possible options for this committee.
Great, thanks, Kristen. So I can provide a little bit of background and some history and then open up for discussion for this item. I wanted to share that current efforts to kind of revisit some type of youth representation within city boards and commissions and committees is underway right now through the Office of Community Engagement. And they're at the beginning stages of developing a program with Latino Service Providers Youth Promoters Program that will center around youth civic engagement. And for those who don't know, Latino Service Providers trains Latinx youth ages 16 to 25 years old to be mental health youth promotores via a structured paid internship program that gives them ample support and opportunities to present mental health education and resources through community conversations. So the promotores engage the Latinx community, offer information in Spanish and English, and are culturally responsive. The hope is that for the Office of Community Engagement program over the next year to a year and a half, they would be developing a program within the city of Santa Rosa that would include training, mentoring, and connection to the council, the city council, and or city boards, commissions, and committees. And their first project right now that they're working on is to create a youth-friendly civic engagement guidebook, which is based on the Office of Community Engagement Citizen Guidebook to Participation, and a training for youth based on that guidebook. And their timeline for placing the youth with boards and commissions or matching youth with boards and commissions would be sometime next year. So that's kind of the current work being done in this area. And just for a little bit more context and history, in the past, the city has had a teen council program, which had different iterations over the years, but it was ultimately put on hold several years ago because of staff turnover, and it was never resurrected. So it was originally established in 1993 as a means for communication between the city council and young people in the community. And their major responsibility was to advise city council on issues related to youth. They were tasked with developing their own structure, including a mission statement, duties, responsibilities, program content and goals, and a meeting schedule. In its most recent iteration in like 2010-ish, I think, 2012 maybe, the teen council was staffed by the Recreation Division, their neighborhood services program, and consisted of middle school students and high school students attending school within Santa Rosa. And they had certain criteria for candidates seeking appointment to the teen council. They served a term of 1 year. They made semi-annual reports to the city council, as well as attending city council meetings. Now that teen council program was just a relationship with council, city council, not other city boards and commissions. And as far as I have been able to find out through my kind of research and asking folks, there has never been a formal program for youth representatives on city boards, committees, and commissions. So just some considerations for today's discussion, to keep in mind, what goals does the committee have for including a youth representative on Art in Public Places? Is there an interest in participating in the program with the Office of Community Engagement when they're ready to launch in a year or so? Is there an interest in seeking a youth member sooner or separate from the engagement program? What criteria should be developed for candidates seeking a position? What responsibilities or expectations would there be for their involvement? So those are just some of the questions I came up with to kick off some of our conversation today, and just a few kind of general guidelines as far as I think would work for them to be structured as a representative or a member on the committee. They would essentially be considered a volunteer, like all of you. They would be a non-voting member because they wouldn't be appointed by council, and that's not currently in our policy. That doesn't mean we couldn't change the policy at some point. So it's another consideration to think of in terms of your goals. Should there be policy changes that would help support a more active role for them on the committee? And then right now they must live in the city limits, just like all of the committee members. So yeah, that's what I've come up with so far in terms of history and current efforts and some considerations to start off with. And yeah, happy to answer any questions or just hear any thoughts that you have about starting something up. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute, Kristen, but Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to apologize because I have to leave in about 5 minutes to get to another meeting. But I just wanted to ask the question about a teen council as opposed to a teen representative, and if there had been any meaningful discussion about what the value of one or the other might be. I've seen some models where there might be a teen or youth advisory council that has a representative that would be a member of a committee like this. And so I'm just wondering what the thoughts might be as to how we would find such a teen representative and who they represent, and whether that might be actually an advisory council of some sort, or I mean, for a group like this, because we are really focused on art, would we want to perhaps look to Art Start or Art Quest or some existing teen art program as perhaps a partner? Anyway, just some questions that come to mind.
Yeah, I would love to have, obviously, someone specifically on our committee, because I think the youth could provide a different viewpoint than us. And I mean, this is something that was really important to me. So, so my preference would certainly be to have someone on our committee, and I'd be willing to work with whoever to try and see if we can get that done. But if the work is the groundwork is being done, I don't know if it makes sense for us to try and strike off on our own, trying to get something done sooner, since we can't even get our task force off the ground yet. So who said that? Yeah, that would be my preference, rather than, just a youth council that's working with the council members. Because I see all the time about youth in the paper that are doing things all over the city. And, I think we need to tap into that market. So.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree, because their ideas, their thoughts are relevant. And for us to progress and go forward, we need to have them as, their opinions and, and just their modern intake.
And if they could be a voting member, if they were on the committee, I think that would probably be important, so that they're not feeling like they don't really count. But if that was a sticking point, I could deal with that.
And I
Do
know
you
you're
have a comment too?
I do. I was thinking about this because I was looking through some materials on Ceres, which is the food growing. It's a bigger kind of nonprofit, and how they use youth. And I just happened to be kind of interested because we were talking about this. And I noticed that they have an internship program, and then they launch students in for a 6-month period into the board. And I sort of like the sort of beginning and end for that. I think for students also, I mean, we have long meetings and they don't move quickly. And I just think that's a lot to ask for a young person to, obviously we're behind a screen now but that could keep going on. And so just in terms of engaging, and then there's people, I like the idea that there was this sort of sense of engaging them with the work and the internships, they had each other as well. And then different people just one would go onto the board for 6 months. But I'm not saying that's just the only way to do it, but it seemed interesting to have some motivation on everyone's part. There's an immediacy. They're here. Let's just get to know them. Like, instead of, there's, students' lives are split into much different time constraints, and also, schedule for their movement through life is different than ours. So just wanted to bring those kind of ideas up. I don't know how it would interface with what we're doing citywide, but we might be able to move together.
And thank you for bringing up awareness of student schedules and wanting to be conscious of how to engage, but to also garner enthusiasm for sitting on a committee and sitting through meetings like these. I agreed with Jeff's comment in wanting to reach out to an existing group that is, whether it's an Art Start or an arts organization with high schoolers. I think that would be the age group I would look to engage with. And I'm open to the opportunity of maybe them having a term or kind of a timeline that they do fit into it that works with the school year as well, so that can kind of be planned into just thinking about the school year as well, giving a little bit more structure to it. I think would, at least I would get excited, a little bit more excited if there was structure around it. And I really do think that having a youth representative on our committee, I would also vote for the representative rather than a youth council. I think that was Tara's first question for us. And in terms of goals for that, I would be interested in understanding how kind of different art opportunities are exciting or engaging to the youth population that we're talking to, and how promoting projects like that could be layered into our policy. So I would be looking for ideas for future projects, and then how to strengthen communication in terms of what is there an avenue that we could be engaging in dialogue with that we're not using currently. And I don't mean to say that I'm going to ask the city to set up a TikTok for the Art and Public Places Committee, but I want to kind of be more aware of what is seen as valuable or engaging ways of reaching out.
Just really quick too, I do like the idea of, ArtQuest and other organizations for teens and stuff, but we also need to remember too, there is art classes at other high schools that we have around, and not all the time that some kids are not able to go to these schools because of distance or because of their brothers or sisters or something are at the school that they're at. And so, I mean, we need to make sure that we look at all high schools or all avenues where there are kids and that are interested in art and are passionate about art. And just not focus on these certain schools specifically for art.
Point.
Well, thanks for all your input. That's helpful. I don't know, Socorro, do you have any thoughts on this that might help with how we move forward? I mean, I didn't want you to feel like you couldn't be part of this conversation, so join in, please, if you have anything.
Well, I think I mean, so this is only my second meeting, so I'm making a lot of assumptions, so always correct me if I'm wrong. But it does sound like you're looking for more voices, looking for more perspectives, and certainly a youth voice in that would be, I think, amazing. I agree that there are lots of places to draw students from, and some very talented artists might not be in art programs. And so consider that. I don't know what your criteria will be. And I also think, and the Art Quest is a beautiful program, and we serve more than Santa Rosa City Schools. So there are other secondary schools in the city bounds to be thinking about in terms of participation. I do think that having them on your committee, depending on when you meet and how frequently, I think they're actually a large number, or a growing number even, of young people who want to be involved in this space and would be honored and feel it's important to attend these meetings. And I think that youth voice can be expanded to not just be high school, but also kind of young people. So like early 20s, so the SRJC or Sonoma State or other programs like that, like you can do like 17 to 25 and that be considered young people in our community. So I think probably the work of what would be the criteria and what's the kind of ideal type of participant we're looking for to really get those youth perspectives and as part of your kind of DNA, I think it would be very positive, and I think you would have wonderful applicants. I think there would be a large number of young people to choose from that are extremely interested in this and would probably push our thinking in a lot of healthy, enjoyable, beautiful ways.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it sounds like the majority of you are more interested in having a kind of a direct representative on this committee. I think that's probably also the quickest and most kind of more attainable way to go, at least immediately, instead of a citywide program. Although I like the idea that if we come up with something that works for us, that could be a model for other city boards and commissions and committees. And hopefully the idea will grow and spread. And then, I think having the Office of Community Engagement separate program, their partnership, the Youth Promotores, I feel like that is a kind of a win-win anyway. If they're working on a program that is going to focus on through Latino service providers, I feel like that doesn't necessarily conflict with what we would be doing separately anyway, unless there's a desire to try to combine those efforts, because I think that they could still, if they come up with a program where they can pair their youth with different city boards, commissions, committees, and the city council, there's still an opportunity to have a representative from that program on the committee as well. I don't necessarily see the downside to that. There are still some steps that I have to do in order to figure out exactly how to get it functional so that the person can actually be on the committee and be counted as a representative, participate as a member. I can also do the research to figure out exactly what it would take to have him be a voting member versus non-voting member. There's a few, more steps that need to be taken in terms of kind of that research and development. But I think bringing back something where we can get more concrete feedback from the committee on how we would do the outreach, what the criteria would be, what kind of a selection process needs to be put in place for that. that would probably be the next steps and what would be most helpful to keep it moving.
Great.
Great. Well, thanks for laying out those steps. We'll circle back to that so that we can keep this conversation going. The development of criteria, our outreach process, and then the selection process. So we'll keep that in mind as we go forward with this goal.
Great.
All right. At this point, I would like to move us on to item 5.3.
Sorry, let's
Sorry,
make
I
sure
didn't
there's no
ask for
public.
public
Yeah.
comment. Eileen, do we have any public comment request for 5.2?
We have no raised hands at this time. Thank you.
Great. Sorry, Tara.
That's okay.
Thanks. All right, now 5.3, we have project updates. Staff will present updates on any current projects.
Thanks. Yeah, I just have very brief updates today. So we are still moving forward with the Unum piece, obviously. We did wrap up the community engagement outreach for collecting the words. David pretty much reported out the current status at our last meeting in October. We had hoped perhaps that we would be ready to bring the final list of words and phrases that were identified for the project, as well as the final design and engineering from the artist to the committee for approval today, but the artist needs a little bit more time to get her engineering prepared, her documents prepared for that. So hopefully that will be at the December meeting. Other than that, I don't think there's any real updates for the parking garage project. Obviously, that was approved on October 18th. So we are moving forward with the contract with the artist for that project. And then the Asawa Fountain, I wanted to briefly mention that the timing for that is looking like we will have a final kind of decision or the final steps to secure the funding needed for the bronze panels should happen at the end of this month. It's a council item that would approve allocating some of the PG&E settlement funds towards this, and that would be its main source of funding. So that is slated for the end of November at this point, and I will be able to report back, hopefully at the December meeting, the outcome of that and what the next steps are for that. Our normal maintenance and conservation program, I mean, we evaluate things as needed and schedule that work. We do have a few items on the list. There's a few items along the Prince Memorial Greenway Trail that were damaged by different homeless encampments over the last year that need to be addressed. So we're scheduling that work soon. And we are also still continuing to work on the repair of the ZAG artwork, the light artwork that's on that pedestrian bridge over the creek, San Rosa Creek. And so we're looking at what different type of attachment technique could be used for the light strips that are on the bridge so that the connectors are not as exposed as they were in the original installation. So anyway, we're continuing to work on a variety of those types of maintenance issues, and I will bring back items to the committee when there's a need for approvals or I can just provide further updates at the next meeting. And I think that's it for today. Thanks. I can answer any questions if you have any.
Do any committee members have any questions for our ongoing or our continuing projects? All right, thanks Tara for the update. And we hope to hear more at the next meeting regarding the Ruth Asawa Fountain. So I hope that continues to be scheduled for the end of this month. And so do I need to ask for public comment for this item okay. Eileen, do we have any public comments for 5.3 project updates?
We have no raised hands at this time. Thank you.
Great. We'll now move to item number 6, committee reports. We have 6.1 ad hoc task force reports and discussion. It sounds like we had a pretty, well, we had a conversation under 5.1 about our different task forces. Do any of the task forces have anything that they would like to report out as an update at this time? Great. Really appreciate everyone's insight and comments that we had during our ad hoc task force discussion earlier. I'm excited to see where this goes once we have more thought and intention behind the goals. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry,
Thank
my
you.
internet dropped for a while. I just, Kristen, since we're meeting to kind of discuss our ad hoc sort of slate on Thursday, it occurred to me that maybe sort of working through some of that process audit stuff might be productive. And I just wanted to check in with the other groups to see if there was anything that we should work into that meeting, since we're trying to sort of have more synergistic or more exchange around those groups. Does that sound like a sensible priority for a Thursday meeting for that group? Or should we focus on the artist in residency program with the planning committee?
Thanks,
Are
Anne, you're
you-
on mute.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not sure. Can you explain a little more what you're asking, Nathan? I'm a little confused, so just.
Well, I was just looking at the bullet points for the project development, and it seemed like maybe working on some concrete bullet points around the process audit might be productive. And I just wondered if anyone from the other groups wanted to chime in, since we have arrangements to discuss that already.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, I don't.
Okay.
So I think we can take a stab at what we think that audit should look like. And if we have questions about that, maybe we bring that up during the next committee report out during
Okay.
for project development. We'll kind of say, this is how that audit kind of looked to us cursory wise, and then ask for input from the other members, just to make sure that we are having an inclusive view on this. Not
Yeah.
sometimes when you're just looking at a problem yourself, it really helps to take a step away. Well, great.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll coordinate on Thursday, and then we'll get back to the group soon.
Yeah, my plan was to meet with Anne again and then just kind of do an outline with us and what we're going to do. But before we jump on it, on whatever we're going to do, maybe run it by Tara first and make sure that we're not repeating it with anybody. We're working in a way where actually we're a puzzle piece and everybody's working on a separate puzzle piece that will eventually connect and work together.
Great. It sounds like we have some individual work, and then small group, and then larger, big group. So great. I like these steps. Moving on our agenda, we have number 7, department reports. This time is reserved for city staff to provide a briefing on issues of interest. No action will be taken on these matters except to possibly place a particular item on a future agenda for consideration.
I have no updates today, so nothing to report.
Great. Thank you, Tara.
Tara, I was wondering too if, because I didn't see it on here, anything that we have to report or say. And I just wanted to announce and tell everybody just to make sure about Winter Blast. I don't know, we're going to have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, under 6, go ahead and do it, but next time it's under 6 committee reports. Even though there's a separate 6.1.
Mhm.
The overall item of 6 is for any committee member to make any announcements or report outs that they'd like.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure, tell everybody, Winter Blast is this Saturday and it's from 5 to 9:30. That's been going strong every year almost, except for, when COVID came around, and it's going to be a lot of fun. There's tons of music, kids can come. It's for families, it's for everybody. It's food, music, parade. You can dress up, whatever you want, be some winter, some kind of theme with winter. And it is, if I said before, it's from 5 to 9:30, and let's support the arts and make ourselves present and bring as many friends and just have a dandy fun time.
I appreciate the
that.
plug.
Yeah, and
What was
I under department reports, I probably should mention 2 things briefly. Just one, generally, not that it impacts city boards and commissions directly, but today, November 1st, was the city's official return to campus day for staff. So we've all been working remotely from home this whole time. And so today was the kind of official, okay, now you have to come back. I'm still working from home in a part-time schedule. So there is a policy that allows for part-time remote work continuing for staff who want to participate in that. So that's just kind of a note for everyone to know that more staff more so are working from the office again, starting today. And then secondly, that does impact this committee, I believe, and Eileen, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. I believe starting in 2022, we will be doing hybrid meetings, which means that members have the option of participating via Zoom currently, but we also have to have an in-person presence in a city facility where some members, should they choose, can participate in person, and staff, some staff will also be on site. So I believe we will be starting that in 2022, potentially January, but I'm not 100% positive.
So right now, that is correct. The goal is to have us start in 2022. The date of the first meeting for Art in Public Places, I believe, is right after the new year. So I guess it will just be sort of contingent on if that meeting occurs. If it does, we'll be having the meeting out of the city manager's office, and it will also be streaming as well.
Great, thank you. We will definitely send out more information and instructions as we know more, and if that's confirmed as our first hybrid meeting, so that you know what it means to participate in person versus continuing to do it remotely. So those really were my only department reports. I'm done with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we'll stay tuned. Item 8 is future agenda items. This schedule is tentative and subject to change pending final publication and posting of the meeting agenda.
Sorry, Kristen, that is the wrong language there. I'm not sure what happened there, but it's that second sentence is the one that you can read that actually makes sense.
Thank you. This time is reserved for discussion, whether to place matters on future agenda for further discussion. Our current list includes private partnerships, commercial real estate, and local artists. Second point, how can APPC support community programs and events? Third point is Creative Sonoma Arts Strategy Update. Fourth, we have Fire Commemoration and Memorial Project. Fifth, Budget for Visiting Artists and Lecture Program. Is there any other items that we would like to add to this future agenda item list? And then they can be placed onto the agenda when time is available. All right, seeing none. I think everyone's a little sleepy and cozy from the rain today. So I would like to move forward with our adjournment. and remind everyone that our next regular meeting of the Art and Public Places Committee is scheduled for Monday, December 6th. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon. Have a great evening.
You have a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.